Hi, I'm Kristen Griego with Griego Mouthpieces, and today I'm joined by Chad Mccullough of chadmccullough.com.
If
you want to get, there you go there now. In all seriousness, it's kind of a special day. It took me 10 years to get to this point. I've worked at Getson for 27 years, and our plant manager, Jim, I knew he had this instrument. And we talked about it. One time I'm at a trade show, and he brought it in, and Andy got to play it, and I came back, and it was already gone. And so it's always been like this fictitious instrument that existed, and I'm like, seriously? So finally Jim retires, and we've been communicating, and I'm like, I want to do a video on this trumpet. I know you have it. I've heard the story many times. And I think I'd mentioned it to you.
Yes, you did.
I went to Jim's house, actually, and I think I texted you. When was that?
That was a couple months ago, and you said, hey, would you be into doing this thing with this trumpet? And I immediately said, no, not interested. Yeah, I was super excited. And I did, it was one of those, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't happen.
Yeah.
And here we are.
And so Jim, he's had some health issues, and so we didn't know if we were going to be able to pull this off. But working with the family, and they were like, yeah, let's do this. And so we're happy to share with you. Okay, backstory. Jim worked at Martin with Larry Ramirez.
Okay.
And Larry was always the hands-on guy that would work with Miles.
Okay.
But Jim was an engineer and a designer with Larry, and they worked together on the instruments.
Right.
So during this time, they made 4 instruments, is what Jim has told me, for Miles to come to the factory and choose.
Over the course of a few days, I think. Right?
Yep. And he chose 2. This is the 4th. Color discrepancy and all this, I don't know. I'm going to actually ask Jim that on camera, hopefully here in a bit.
Okay.
But this is a new old stock Miles Davis, made for Miles Davis, who came in, he tried it, and it's been in Jim's collection ever since.
I remember a few years ago I was up here and Jim was telling me that, first of all, he was very, I hope we can get him to kind of go into like the Martin committee and the ethos and the whole like what it actually is and what, the different bores and the different bells and all of this that like don't really get talked about too much. But, they shut down the factory. Nobody could be there. So Miles could come in and work and try horns and tweak horns. And then he went to his hotel and they brought the horns to the hotel and he kept playing them and then came back the next day and kept playing them. And I think it's fascinating to just think about like, one, Miles Davis sitting in a hotel room up here. 2, just the I think with a lot of, there are many different versions of the same story when we talk about jazz legends, and they don't always line up, especially when people are maybe too cool to talk about the fact that they're actually really into their tools that they use and have specific needs and specific wants, and then like the relationship between the builder and the musician and how, a lot of times it's very difficult to discuss exactly what I'm feeling as a trumpet player and what that means to from a technical standpoint of we need to make this longer or shorter or tighter or looser or
smaller or larger.
Exactly. And how a lot of times I think the feel of the instrument is opposite of what it actually is because we're feeling our body's response to the instrument.
That's actually absolutely correct. Yep.
And I think so. Just kind of exploring this and thinking about different musicians, different instruments based on their needs. So many people played the Martin Committee and played very different styles. It wasn't just the dark and smoky horn, right? Dizzy,
right,
is very different from Chet Baker, right? But both were on this instrument. I think.
It's fascinating to see, and whenever I got the instrument, all I did was pull the pistons, oil them. I put a little oil on the 1st and 3rd slides, greased up the main tuning slide. That's all I've done. I have played it, but here we go. Let's go ahead. The latches are open, so it's all you.
Okay, we're gonna
I'll
do
let you
this.
do this.
I'm gonna not
Case is brand new. Now this trumpet's gold plated first, the entire thing. And then it was black lacquered. And it was then engraved. And I think you would have to do multiple coats of the black lacquer, unless it was tinted just perfect to only do one coat. But I would think you would probably have to do 2 coats.
Before the engraving.
Mm-hmm. And then the engraving would go on top. And it says Martin, Kenosha, Wisconsin, USA. It's brand new. I didn't even want to polish it. I didn't do anything.
Wow.
They're jeweled. You can see, and actually, this is the machine that does these cross indexes. Is pretty. It's an old school machine that would have done these little cross hatches.
Same on the
top. And one of the reasons I brought Chad in is he's kind of a gearhead.
Wow.
I mean, it's. I think Jim has probably played it. I know that Andy has played it. I know I now have. And soon you. What are your thoughts?
I have none. I'm just trying not to cry.
It's beautiful. It has gold-plated lever keys, water keys. Interesting. If you look right here, yeah, there's just even the shape that they chose. Now, I have to imagine that Larry and Jim, they went through a bunch of these, I would think, and they would go through and test. The compression on this instrument is great. I mean, it's really fine. And the factory card was in the case. And interesting to me, it just says Martin Trumpet, Miles Davis, number 870944. And then up here, it says ST550. Then that's scratched out, and then it says ST3460.
And what are those numbers?
It's a 460 bore.
Ah, okay.
Because he played 460 bore. I don't know what the ST550 is. Now, Jim had mentioned to me...
This says ST550 here.
Yeah, and there's something unique about this instrument that Jim was talking about.
Okay.
And there was something special about the stroke of the pistons, and he's mentioned that to me. But I'm gonna try and ask him that as well, because this is the job card from the factory, and along with the wire.
So the Martins were a 2 and a 3 bore.
Okay.
The 3 bore was the large bore, and 2 was the medium large. So this is a 2. Which is what Miles played. A lot of people will say it's not. The 3 bores are the ones that everybody wants on eBay. All the collectors love those. But wow, look at that little...
the knurling on it. Yeah, it's a diamond knurling.
That's amazing. Cool.
Yeah.
So it's almost like bluish black, huh?
It does, in the right light, yeah.
So how long would an engraving like this take somebody?
Well, Josh, I was talking to Josh Landris about this, and he's a historian. I can send him a picture, and he'll go, oh, that bell was replaced on this trumpet, and because the valve casing's this and the engraving was. He's like my go-to guru, and I sent him this, and within 5 minutes I got a call, and we were talking about it, and even down to the Venturi size. But he said that Sherry actually engraved this trumpet, and now Sherry's retired.
Okay.
Sherry Huntley, I believe is her last name.
Okay.
But I'm going to reach out to her and send her a picture of the instrument and see if she remembers engraving it.
Yeah.
She did all of the engraving for Miles Trumpets.
Wow, cool.
You know you're getting old when you're talking about history. So.
It's stunning.
Now, talk to me about the mouthpieces that you brought.
Okay, so I have 2 mouthpieces here. I'm just going to hold this.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
Hold it. So I believe this is true. Joe Gustat was the principal trumpet player in the St. Louis Symphony. He moved down to second so that he could open a music store, because I don't think it paid what the CSO pace.
Yeah.
So he made mouthpieces in the back for his students, like Clark Terry, Miles. And
Probably with a hand lathe. I'm assuming not a CNC lathe at this point.
of course. I mean, this
Yeah.
was the 20s, 30s, 40s.
Yeah.
You know? So there are these Joe Gustat mouthpieces. There are not very many of them left. I've heard that Miles collected them. So I got 2 of these. This is a number 1, which is what Miles played through about the end of the 60s. Freddie Webster used to short shank guys' mouthpieces because, the Bach mouthpieces were designed for an A trumpet. They figured out a long time ago that if they made them a little shorter, it would actually work better. So Freddie Webster short shanked Dizzy's mouthpiece, short shanked Miles's, and so there's a short shank number 1, and then in the 70s, Miles played a bent number 2.
Interesting. That's a quarter of a length shorter.
Yep. It's
And when
considerable.
I first looked at it, I saw the smaller backbore. I'm like, it's small. No, it's not a smaller backbore. It was just shortened.
Shortened. Yep. So there's some discrepancy, and I think it's actually wrong in the autobiography. But Joe Gustat, who apparently was from Czechoslovakia, because this one says Czechoslovakia on the mouthpiece, had made the mouthpieces for Gustav Heim, who was in New York, I think, in the symphony there. And so there's some Gustav mix-up. And Holton later copied the Heim mouthpiece. And so there is, I was fed this story that Miles played a Heim, but he played a Joe Gustat mouthpiece.
Interesting. How did you figure this out?
Actually, Josh helped me, and then a lot of just different reading. Yeah. Just trying to, wait, this doesn't look right. This doesn't look like these pictures.
Oh, yeah,
What's going on,
just,
right?
just studying.
Yeah.
Yeah, live performances, pictures, everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and even Canstel had copied a mouthpiece and said, this is a Gustav Heim number 1, number 2. It doesn't make...
Well, and we talked about this earlier. Sometimes when you copy a mouthpiece, they weren't single pointing the backbores. Everything was done with forming tools.
Right.
And so if they didn't have the forming tools, mouthpiece makers can be lazy, myself included, in that they'll use your existing backbore tooling.
Right.
And then it will come out playing different because the shape of the backbore, the tapers, are different. It'll be whatever Canstel was using for the backbore.
Totally.
So even though it may have the same rim, cup, and throat, it's going to play totally different.
It's going to do, and also just, I think, scanning around, part, it might hit it there instead of where it needs, depending on how sharp the scanner thing is. So
well, the probe, we actually do every quarter of a millimeter. And so for every millimeter we're getting, 4 points of data. And then I have the probe diameter.
Yeah.
And then we're accurate. The new machines are accurate down to quarter of a micron. I actually don't do any of the scanning myself because there's people that are better at it. Yeah. Learn what you're good at and then pay somebody else for what they're good at.
Yeah. So I had the Canstel copies and just to try them, and it didn't feel right. And there just were a lot of interesting kind of.
Were they short shanked?
No. So, just these where it's this isn't real. And so I found these through a weird story. I got these. I don't know whose mouthpieces they are, but they are right.
Yeah.
And
very correct.
Yes. And so I was super excited. I wanted to bring them up. I actually...
Now, when did Miles go to a bent mouthpiece? Sorry to interrupt.
In the 70s.
Okay.
Later, in the 80s, so what would be period specific for this horn was actually a Giardinelli. And I think he had somebody at Giardinelli copy his mouthpieces, and he had a bent one for a little bit. I have played a straight Giardinelli that he owned. And the throat you could throw a pencil through it. It's huge. So.
And I think that's a sound like in the later recordings, you can hear that.
Yeah, totally.
The soft end, but the really wide sound.
Broad. So, I mean, probably 16 drill, huge. So, pretty cool. These are not. These are, and I had both of these scanned. Apparently, the Gustat #1 is very, very close to a Bach 7C from this time. So I imagine he was probably, which makes a little bit of sense that he would copy something widely available for his students.
Yeah, yeah.
So this one is a bit deeper than some of the #2s that I've seen scans of.
It's not real heavy on the outside,
No.
the blank shape, and it actually reminds me more of some European German style.
Yeah.
It almost looks like a baby tuba mouthpiece
Yeah.
to my eye as I just look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So this says Gustat Model 2, Czechoslovakia.
So which do you want to play?
Yeah. I'll try the first one. We're going to play now?
Sure, why not?
Now is the time?
No, I don't know. I mean, is there ever a time you want to play an instrument that was made for Miles?
No. Yes. It's tighter than I.
It's full compression. The pistons have absolutely. Normally when you play a vintage instrument, the first thing you experience is a very open feeling because the pistons are slightly worn because they've been played for 20, 30, 40 years, and that you are not experiencing that. These pistons have full compression from the factory.
Well, and I think also the large bore Martins don't play like this.
Yeah.
You know, they're much. And I hope that we can get Jim to talk about this, but I think that I mean, there's a lot of different Martin committees, and thinking, oh, I just want the horn that Miles played. They were all custom. Like I heard he had an all copper one for a while. This makes more sense, that it's tight without being, tight's the wrong word, but it's like very compact.
It's super fast.
Yes.
On the face, and I didn't want to say that until after you played it, but the first thing is like.
Yeah, yep. And a lot of Martin committees that I have played are kind of sloppy.
Oh, this is not that.
No. Which is interesting. I mean, like, and it makes, like, okay, it's really unfocused. It's really uncentered as a trumpet. Okay, cool, we can make that.
Yeah.
I can get an unfocused dark sound. This is not that at all. I mean, that articulation is amazing.
The interesting thing is I thought with the black lacquer, usually a lacquered instrument will bring in the sound. But this, without having the braces anywhere near here, this horn is open and the overtones are actually ringing really sweetly. Like in my inner ear, I always tell when a good trumpet is being played, that my inner ear I'll get a little tickle. And then a little bit of that. And there's a lot of color in this. Well, I think what we're going to do, I'm going to take a break and go pick Jim up. Because I know Jim wants to hear this instrument being played. So I'm going to let you just have some fun with this. And then we're going to come back.
If I'm not here when you get back, I don't know what happened.
Chad, thanks for being part of this journey. This is so much fun.